10 disturbing, brutal movies based on real-life atrocities. Number 1. The Strangers. Director Brian Bertino wrote the script for his 2008 sleeper hit The Strangers, based not only on a true event from his own childhood, but on 2 other true stories of heinous crimes. He states his main inspiration for the screenplay was the story of the Manson family murders as recorded in the true crime book Helter Skelter, but also gives a nod to the events of the Ketty Cabin murders in 1981. The Strangers is a truly disturbing home invasion story not for the squeamish or faint of heart. What unfolds in the story is a psychological night of terror that pits a young couple against 3 masked strangers who invade their remote getaway. Gore and mayhem ensues. Mixed reviews of the film were given by critics. Number 2. Hostel. Hostel was written and directed by Eli Roth. This 2005 horror film had Quentin Tarantino as one of its executive producers and is the first installment of the Hostel trilogy series. The film portrays the story of 2 college students backpacking through Europe who are lured to a Slovakian hostel where they find themselves trapped in a sinister situation while drawn into a deadly game by a mysterious group that kidnaps, then tortures and kills victims. Dealing with the sickest, darkest recesses of human nature, the film features plenty of gore and guts. Unbelievably, Roth's Hostel started out as a documentary about an underground, extreme thrill-seeking practice involving paid murder, but he changed his mind as he began to fear retribution by the ringleaders of the business. Hostel is considered the popular zenith of torture porn. Number 3. Zodiac. The 2007 thriller Zodiac by director David Fincher is based on Robert Graysmith's nonfiction novel of the same title. Zodiac tells the story of one of California's most infamous unsolved crime waves. It occurred during the late 1960s and early 1970s and involved the self-named Zodiac serial killer who murdered several people and was responsible for a massive manhunt during which he taunted the police with ciphers sent to the press, letters to the police, and blood-tainted clothing from his victims. Fincher and screenplay writer James Vanderbilt, as well as their producer, spent more than a year on their own investigation and thoroughly researched the real Zodiac murders. Fincher was drawn to the story because he grew up in Marin County during the Zodiac's reign of terror and considered him to be the ultimate boogeyman. He also wanted to clearly present facts and not fiction, as the story has assumed mythical proportions through the decades since because of its unfinished nature. Fincher balances the violent, the disturbing, and the hilarious while building the sense of dread that permeated the lives of normal people during that time. The ending leaves audiences unsettled. Number 4. Boys Don't Cry. Kimberly Pierce's 1999 romantic drama Boys Don't Cry was written by Pierce and Andy Bean and tells the story of a transgender man who adopts the male identity of Brandon Tina while trying to find himself and discover love in a small Nebraska town. In the end, he falls victim to a transphobia and a brutal crime committed by 2 male acquaintances. Hailed as a tragic vision of fear and prejudice in small-town America, the film won multiple award nominations, and Hilary Swank, who portrayed Brandon, won the 2000 Academy Award for Best Actress. Some people who knew Brandon criticized the film for inaccurate portrayals of certain events. Yet prior to filming, Pierce interviewed the people closely involved in Brandon's rape and murder case and immersed herself in the trial transcripts and other available information about his murder. Much factual information from this study was incorporated into this moving yet terrifying film. Number 5. Bully. A disturbing psychological study of bullying, director Larry Clark's film Bully shares the true story of a high school bully who was eventually murdered by the very kids he bullied. It is also an honest case study of the bullies and of group mentality, as well as the complex, dark portrayal of the confused emotional state of teenagers. This psychological crime drama is based on the 1993 murder of Bobby Kent in South Florida by the Broward County Seven, as the teens came to be called. The screenplay was adapted from the nonfiction book Bully, a true story of high school revenge by Jim Shoots. Critics praised the movie's straightforward, disturbing handling of youth murder and crime, but gave it mixed reviews. Roger Ebert was a notable admirer, however, stating that the movie was all the sadness and shabbiness, all the mess and cruelty and thoughtless stupidity of the true crime of which it is based. Number 6. 12 Years a Slave. A disturbing visual record of the horrors of the slave trade, 12 Years a Slave boldly pulls no punches in presenting the brutality of slavery. This 2013 period drama film is an adaptation of Solomon Northup's 12 Years a Slave, his memoir. Northup was a free-born New York man of color who was kidnapped in 1841 in Washington, D.C. and sold into slavery. He was transported to work on plantations in Louisiana for the next 12 years before his eventual release. Director Stephen McQueen was stunned when he originally read Northup's memoir and made it his passion to turn this first-hand account of slavery into a film. 12 Years a Slave won the Academy Award and Golden Globe for Best Picture as well as the British Academy of Film and Television Arts Best Film Award. The scholarly edition of the memoir published in the 1960s was validated and concluded by experts to be an accurate record of actual events. Number 7. Wolf Creek. Inspired by the actual killings of backpackers in the 1990s in Australia, Wolf Creek is a bloodletting exploitation film with plenty of knives a-slicing. Some audience members walked out of its early screenings. It is one of the most brutal movies based on real-life atrocities. Labeled as vicious, cruel, cynical, misogynistic, and other things, the film was nevertheless nominated for multiple awards from the Australian Academy of Cinema and Television Arts. 3 backpackers stranded in the Australian outback become embroiled in a hellish nightmare when they are befriended by a local who turns out to be a torturing, sadistic psychopath, serial-killing pig hunter Mick Taylor. The film was ambiguously touted as being based on true events. These events seem to be based on the true-life murders of tourists in the 1990s by Ivan Milo and in 2001 by Bradley Murdoch. Wolf Creek is a real location, although it is spelled Wolf Creek, W-O-L-F-E. Many mistakenly believe the entire film is based on a true story, but it is only influenced by these others. Number 8. Rosewood. Boys in the Hood director John Singleton directed his 1997 historical fiction drama Rosewood as a no-holds-barred look at racist violence and racism in the American South. This violent movie is hard to watch as it is based on historic events of the 1923 Rosewood Massacre in the town of that name in Florida, during which a white mob killed blacks and burned down their town. Rosewood is historical fiction because while it is based on true events, it contains some major changes, such as the addition of an outsider who comes to help the people of Rosewood with their self-defense and used his guns in the fight. It also has a higher body count than what actually occurred in Rosewood. The film is rated R for its assaults, violence, and sexual assault scenes as well as profuse use of curses and racial slurs. While favorably received by many critics, it wasn't a commercial success. The long-suppressed story of the real Rosewood was revealed in the late 20th century when survivors won a claim against the state of Florida for not protecting them. Historically, that was the first time victims of racial violence were compensated by any state government in the United States. Other story changes involved making composites of several actual historical figures and the film offering the potential for a happy ending. E.R. Shipp of the New York Times wrote the film assumes a lot and makes up a lot more. He felt the creation of an outside helper was condescending to the town's actual survivors. Number 9. Whistleblower. The 2010 biographical crime drama The Whistleblower is based on the true story of a police officer recruited to be a UN peacekeeper in post-war Bosnia and Herzegovina who became embroiled in a nightmare of a different kind from post-war concerns. In real life, Catherine Bolkovac of Nebraska was recruited by the United Nations as a peacekeeper for DynCorp International and discovered a sex trafficking operation the corporation backs while the UN turns a blind eye. After being fired for trying to shut it down, she told her story to the BBC and won a wrongful termination lawsuit against the company. Director Larissa Kondracki co-wrote the screenplay of this fictionalized dramatic version based on Bolkovac's experiences and not her written memoir. In the film, the two young women who are trafficked into Bosnia are composites of all the girls forced to work in the country's brothels. A pseudonym was used for DynCorp. Details of the bureaucracy were left out, but the inhumane treatment of the young women was bluntly and graphically displayed, most notably by a scene of a rape with a lead pipe. The movie received mixed reviews, with some critics calling the violence exploitative. Number 10. Compliance. Though it contains very little violence, 2012's Compliance is one of the most disturbing films to be produced in the last few years. The action takes place almost completely in a fast food restaurant and is closely based on a true story. A strip search prank call scam in a Kentucky McDonald's that manipulated people through the study of the nature of suggestion, power, gender relations, and subservience. The psychologically disturbing nature of the film makes it very difficult to sit through and watch. A police officer calls the manager of a fast food restaurant and requests that the manager detain an employee accused by a customer of theft. The officer also requires her to perform unlawful and intrusive procedures on her, involving sexual acts. The film premiered at the 2012 Sundance Film Festival, and the audience response included some walkouts. Subscribe for more.